Welcome, my friends, to the latest edition of Here's What We Know, the podcast of unexpected conversations. Even though we do have a theme today, I have Bryan Wetzel, the author of The Real Problem Destroying Education. The Real Problems Destroying Education.
Yeah.
Plus, he and I, we're coming to find out, are pretty much the same guy. Right? We're it's just like we got the weekends going. He's got his kids raised. I'm in the midst of raising my kids, but I'm not going to lie and say we're not looking forward to happy hour. We are. It's just
We're looking forward to it.
It's here, and it's somewhere. Even if you are from Georgia,
What's wrong with Georgia?
I'm from
Actually,
Alabama.
my family's from New York and Pennsylvania. I was born in Germany. My dad was in the service. We moved to Georgia when I was 2, and as soon as high school graduation came around, I was like, I'm out of here, because I thought I wanted to, and I did. I traveled around and saw the world and the country, and then eventually, somehow, I just kept getting pulled back to my home state. So,
I'm from Alabama,
and I love it here. You where?
I'm from Alabama. Now I live in California. Now I'm here. If you've ever heard of, I'm in San Jose, and if you've ever heard of Silicon Valley is San Jose. So,
I lived for a brief moment down near Bear Lake.
And Alabama
Las Vegas.
I literally took my kids because they wanted to see where Dad was from. So I took them to the little small town that I am from.
What town is that?
Florella, Alabama, right on the Florida-Alabama line.
I have a hat that says Floribama.
Floralla, right? It. And there was the bar that's very famous now. It wasn't as famous when I was growing up. The Floribama, what we didn't call it Floribama. We called it the Bloody Bucket. The Bloody Bucket. And if you do the math, from all the fights, there'd be blood on the floor, and they'd mop up the blood, and that was the Bloody Bucket. So it was the way it went, but they got a chance to go see it.
Well, that restaurant has grown quite a bit. It's not, you have the bar on one side of the street and a restaurant across the street by the same name, and then they have a gift shop in a different building across the street.
I haven't been there since I was 19 years old.
Okay. So it's been a while.
It's been a while.
I'm not saying you're old, but it's been a while. I grew up in a small town in Georgia called Lawrenceville. It now has an overpass and a 6-lane road running through it. But at the time, if we wanted to go to the mall for the weekend, my parents would be like, we're going to the mall in 2 weeks on Saturday, because it was such a trek.
2 hours.
We had.
It was 2 hours to get to the mall,
but it was known you don't plan anything for Saturday because we're making the trek to the mall. There wasn't anything close to us until I was in high school. Finally,
my buddies and I in high school would literally drive 2 hours to go to the mall, and none of us had any money. And we'd take $5 and we'd eat at Chick-fil-A, because Chick-fil-A was only a mall restaurant. There were no standalone Chick-fil-A's. Yeah. So we would go to Chick-fil-A, we would walk around for 4 hours, and then we'd drive back. And so I was telling this to my sons, and they're like, what? And I said, yeah, we'd leave at 8:00 in the morning, and we get home at 6:00 at night. Right.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. We didn't have
I told
anything.
my kids we would hang out at the mall, and they're like, why? I'm like, because that's where we would meet girls from other schools.
Well, we got off the plane in Florida, in Panama City, and my son turned and looked at me. He goes, the air is heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they were like, it's so hot. And I said, you want to tell you something? I'll blow your mind. This is my walk 5 miles uphill both ways story. I said, you ready for this? He goes, what? I said, I didn't live in a place that had air conditioning until I was 22 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
Was that when you moved?
I went to college and lived in a fraternity house that did not have air conditioning.
Oh, wow.
So I was in a place
my
with
relatives
40
up
guys.
north didn't have it, but that was because they only had a hot month and a half or 2 in Pennsylvania. And so they just lived without it for that 2 months at the most. But down here, I remember my air conditioning went out when I was a senior in high school in my car. And so you'd have all the windows down, and it still wasn't enough. So you'd get out of the car, by the way, to go to your job or go to school, and your back would be wet, your shirt, because you had the faux leather seats.
I got to go to my high school reunion. I had 50 kids in my high school reunion. We've already lost.
Wow.
We just lost our 14th last week.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
and my sons are like, what's going on down there? I'm like, it is very hard to live there. It's
Yeah.
very hard to live there.
But we're also getting to an age where people, it's sad, but I'm 57. I'll be 58 in a few months. I'm just getting to the point where, not everyone is taking care of themselves the same way. And, I'll be on Facebook and be, oh, such and such passed. Like I knew that. Or then recently I've had more teachers that I had in high school who have been passing. So eventually
But
they'll turn over the baton to us and we'll pass.
think about it though, and I've had
Mhm.
this recollection. People that I thought of as old when I was growing up, right?
Yes.
So, and I'm talking about not 8 or 9, I'm talking 15 through 18. People who I
Right.
thought of as old, I look back now and realize they were 52, right? But it was
Right.
such a hard life. And now you meet people who are, I play golf. I'll go out and get paired with guys in their 80s. It's not unusual. I played golf last year with a guy who was 94 years old and was striping it.
Really?
Right? Yeah, because healthcare's got so much better, and we all understand. We
Right.
understand you shouldn't eat fried chicken and French fries six days a week, and then back that up with gravy on
Not
Sunday.
everybody understands that. I own a
And
gym, by the way, and I just wrote an article on my Substack a month ago where I talked about the fact that I I'm trying to tell everybody you don't have to be insane about getting in shape or eating better or doing whatever, but you should at least work at it and try and maintain. Because I get a lot of people that walk through the door in their 60s and say, "My doctor told me I needed to come here." Or they won't do my hip replacement or my knee replacement, or that I'm going to die if I don't start exercising, or I have osteoporosis. And you think, oh, well, we're starting. You've never exercised, you've never watched your diet, and now we're going to start at 64. This is going to be a hard, and a lot of them will end up, I won't see them in 2 weeks
well,
because
that's
they'll
what
give up.
everybody who goes to a gym, you know that as well as I do. I don't go to the gym in January. I don't. Because it's because
It's
there's all the
packed.
people who are going to be there. And
Yeah.
luckily I run and I have some equipment here at home. And I'm just
Yeah.
in January, it's the way I talk about golf courses on the weekend. I get to play during the week. I'm not
Yeah.
going on a
Me
weekend.
too.
That's
I
for the
just
people who
played
can't go.
on Tuesday.
Nice in Georgia.
I got
What nice
rained
course.
out at the back nine, but we played on Tuesday. Yeah, I'm the same. My schedule's my own time, and I don't do the week. The weekend's ridiculous. That's when they're like, come on, get it moving, get it moving, get it moving. When you play on Tuesday, you can have conversations, you can shoot the shit.
I try to speed up my group because I'll get paired with a lot of old guys, which is wonderful. I play
Uh,
with old guys and they think I'm just killing the ball. And I'm
well,
like,
if you're
for
walking the
God,
course
I'm
with a
not.
94-year-old guy,
Let me tell you this story, right? So
yeah,
this guy's 94. And again, I know we've got a topic here. We do. We'll get back to it. But right now it's just I told you we're the same guy. So I'm playing with
yeah,
this guy and he's playing really well. And I'm like, what's the best round you ever shot? And here's how much of a gentleman he was. He goes, I can't remember. And he has this 4,000-year-old putter. And I'm like, hey, Phil, his name was Phil. I said, Phil, how old is that putter? And he looks at me and he goes, there's a cool story behind it. You want to hear it? And I said, yes. And he goes, well, I was in Argentina and I was playing Sam Snead. And my buddy told me to use this putter. And I
yeah.
looked at my buddy that I was playing with and I'm like, oh my God, you know that means he beat Sam Snead. Because that's the only reason your
Hmm.
buddy would tell you, no, you keep that putter. That's your putter. And he
Hmm.
just smiles and never says a word. And then I found out from another friend of his that he used to caddy for Ben Hogan.
Really? My first driver was a Ben Hogan.
So that's what
I
I
don't
love
think
about
he owned
golf.
it personally, but I'm pretty sure the store
He
had his
might
name on
have.
it.
He might have.
So, and
So
on the 94 thing, I have several, I would say a dozen or so men in their late 80s uh, who come in and exercise. I mean, they're not powerlifting, but they'll get on the treadmill for 40 minutes and then go do some machines. And one of them's 88, still drives, and I commend them every day. I see them in
well,
there.
we're in the stage, and I tell my son, because I have a 15-year-old, and he'll have me go to the gym with him sometime, and he's there doing all this stuff, and he goes, why aren't you doing, why aren't you working with the bench? Because I use the machines and stuff. And he goes, why aren't you doing that? I'm like, dude, we have different goals. You
Right.
play football, you're trying to be big, and
Mm,
plus there's girls, right?
yeah.
There's girls. I've got my girl. She's called your mother, right? I
Hmm.
said, what
Yeah.
I'm trying to do is stay alive. Different goals. And you'll
Hmm.
figure that out later on. We're in
Yes.
different places in our lives. So it's fascinating because, and speaking of fascinating, you've got such a heck of a background. You've got businesses that you've run, because
Hmm.
I saw Bryan, and he's like, well, he's run businesses, and he's a man of faith, and he's written this book on education, and because he's got 4 kids and he's been through the process. And I'm like, wow, he and I need to talk. I don't know if we'll get around to talking about anything that we're supposed to talk
Okay.
about, but
Right.
he and I we're the same person, except he he probably plays
I
better
still live in
golf
the
because
South.
he's been to the David Ledbetter Golf Academy.
I bet. Yeah. Actually, this was when I had my golf show, and they donated several shirts for us. And I've actually had this for quite a while, but it still looks good. So
You had a David,
I
you
wear
had
it.
a golf show. My
We had
gosh.
David. Yeah, we had David Ledbetter came out, and I wanted to give him some lines because our show was a comedy. And I said, I want you to rip on the guys in the show. And so we had him hitting on the driving range, and he came out and just started like laying into them about how terrible they were. And the funny thing is he was a gentleman in making fun of them. So like the things that I would say to my buds, which are pretty harsh,
Uh-huh.
like your putter got stuck in your skirt
I
or up
know.
there. He was like, yeah, I've seen better swings on a playground. And we laughed. And I was like, yeah, you can really go at him if you want, because that's the show. And he just couldn't bring himself to get, to the really, you know, naughty stuff, basically, is what I used to tell him. You can go at him hard. No, that's good. But it was an honor because honestly, we didn't think that he would. You make whenever you're doing a show, you make the offer to people who are in a position of celebrity. And most of the time they're going to say, well, I don't have time, or they won't respond or whatever. But we made a response, and within an hour, he said, sure, I'll come out and give you 30 minutes.
Isn't it
And
amazing?
yeah. And I've had other celebrities do that. And then I've had some that you wish you had never met. The problem with meeting celebrities, by the way, when they act like that, is that your whole, like, you like this person before you meet them. And so you're hoping for that you'll like them when they leave. And then they ruin all that. And you're just like, oh man, I really thought they were a good, fun person. But, you
Because
know,
again, we're the same people. I've interviewed a lot of people,
mhm.
celebrities. I've been in radio forever. I've done this stuff. And what I always try to do when people meet me, right? Because I've been here, I've been doing radio here in San Jose since 1991. I can't tell you how many people sit back and go, I've literally grown up with you here, meet my grandkids.
Yeah. I
And,
actually had some radio personalities on my golf show. You know
and
why? Because we wanted people who could talk while they were playing, and radio people know how to talk.
yeah, they absolutely do. And what I've always hoped to be, and I try to give this compliment when somebody goes, "Hey, what's Garth like?" Or Tim McGraw, whatever.
Hmm.
The thing I try to tell people is they are who you hope they are, because that's who I've always tried to
Yeah.
be. I'm not trying to be anybody I'm not, but I'm
Now,
trying to
Tim
be
was
who you hope
nice
I
when I
am.
met him, but he was very new to the industry. Faith Hill was
McGraw,
very nice. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I've that's
Never
the
met
Tim McGraw
Garth.
guitar up there.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, Garth, again, you can't do this for as long as I do it without having to meet. It's easier for me to tell you I haven't met.
Well, yeah, you've been in that industry. So look, one of my friends, um, or I haven't seen him in a while, but he used to be on the radio in a big station in Atlanta. Jimmy Barron, he
Mhm.
loved um, uh, Neil Diamond. I mean, I loved him. And then he got to meet him, and he was kind of, cold to him, and he tried to make a joke with him, and fell flat, and Neil just basically tuned him out. And he was like, I wish I had never met him. I liked how I felt about him before I shook his hand. So that's
You
what I
know,
tell people all the time, that you first of all, you have to also consider when you meet them. Now, you meet them in a situation where they're there to talk
they're
to you.
expecting it.
And I hate it. Like I know several people who have run into Billy Crystal in California years and years ago, decades, when he was with his kids. And they said he was always nice and cordial. And then I heard someone one day, I was talking to them when I was traveling. I think it was in Minnesota, and I don't know where they met him, but they were like, "Hey, he was so standoffish." And I just wanted an autograph. I was like, "Well, where were you?" And he gave me the name of a restaurant. And I was like, "You didn't walk up to him while he was eating with his family, did you?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, but he's a celebrity. He should expect that." And I'm like, "No, no, that gets old to those two people who are in the public light. Just leave them alone." We
Well,
saw, I think it was my wife and I, or it was always someone else. It wasn't another girl, but I was in Nashville, and Dave Grohl was at a table
uh,
across the restaurant.
Foo
There was a
Fighter,
line
Dave
of
Grohl.
people, and it never went. It never, like the line of, it was all guys, by the way.
Yeah.
They never. And I went into the restroom later, and one of the guys that shook his hands was with his friend, and they were just like they were two groupies about how I met Dave Grohl. But I just remember thinking, Dave, if you wouldn't sign their autographs at the dinner table, then there wouldn't be a line, and you could at least eat your dinner in peace. But I guess you also don't want that impression of you out in the ether. And some people are just nice. Like, I know people who know Shaq very well, and they're like, he
Mhm.
never turns down an opportunity when somebody asks to take a picture or an autograph, to the point where if you're out with him trying to talk business, it's an endless interruption that you wish he would cut off, but he doesn't. He's just that guy.
And that's the price you pay if you're going to go up to somebody in a place that's not right. I got a friend of mine who's a songwriter, and he remember when he got to Nashville, he saw Glenn Campbell at dinner, and he's like, I just wanted to say, because he's been my inspiration, and he went up and said, Mr. Campbell, I just wanted to know you're just my inspiration. I just wanted to say hello. And he goes, Glenn Campbell
Yeah.
looked at him and goes, can't you see I'm eating? Can you leave me the hell alone?
Yeah.
And he goes, the same thing. I wish
I
I'd have
think
never
dinner is
said
the worst
anything.
place to bother a celebrity.
Absolutely.
I get
Especially,
bothered when people keep talking. I own a business in town. I've been at the dinner where people keep wanting to come over and ask me questions about the business. And I'm like, I got food here and silverware, you know?
well, it's that, and especially when you're of a different level of celebrity, right? When you get to
Yes.
that huge level of celebrity,
Well, you
and
just have no privacy when you
and
step
people just
out.
can't understand that you don't get that moment. My kids years ago were walking in the mall and stuff, and this lady comes up. She goes, "I listen to you all the time. I just want to say hello. I know these are your son. Thank you." So like that, and walked away. And my son was kind of pissed off. He's like, "Why would she do that? She doesn't know you. What? What?" And I had to
Hmm.
turn around and go, "Hey, man, you know that house we live in? You know
Yeah.
that pool you play out in the backyard?
Hmm.
You know the fact that we're here at the mall getting ready to buy you dinner? Do you know who
Hmm.
pays for that? That lady does,
Yeah. Well,
right?
and she didn't take up a lot of your time. She
Not
was
at
core.
all."
She said I wanted you to know this, and I'll
Yeah.
let you alone.
And
And I
when they're
think you got to
respectful,
respect that
yeah, when
somewhat.
somebody's respectful, that's awesome. But I'm not a
I'll tell
business
you
owner either.
a
I mean, I'm a
story
business owner
that
now, but not like you are.
I was trying to pitch Norm Macdonald to appearing on doing a guest spot on a show, and it's very hard to talk to him because he's always cutting up jokes, and it's hard to tell when he's serious or not. But uh, this little kid came over and wanted to say hello to him, and he was very cordial to him. And I know that he was running behind, and I said, "Well, that's great that you do that." And he said, celebrities have the ability to make someone's day, their week, just by saying, "Hi, nice to meet you." You don't have to do anything more than that. He's like, "Why wouldn't you do that? It isn't costing you money. It's not doing any more." And that was the only time that I was like, he's serious right now. And I'm hearing what's actually in his heart. because everything else that we talked about was a constant. I couldn't tell. It's like, I'll tell you a funny story. You may have even had this. My friends who were on the radio here back when Jim Carrey was blowing up, he was still on In Living Color.
Yeah.
I think he had just done his first movie. Had him on the
Ace
show.
Ventura
He actually,
or whatever.
It was Ace Ventura. He was in studio, and they just wanted to have a conversation with him on the air. And they're like, when we would go to commercial, he was a normal guy and we could just sit and chat. But as soon as we were like, we're back on the air, he would go into his act mode and his shtick.
Yeah.
And they just could never get him. And they really wanted him to just be in that conversational mode. And they never were able to get there because I guess you get so programmed that this is my public personification that I have to put out.
For them, because I get it being on the radio, you wanted that moment. The truth of it is, they weren't smart enough to understand that Jim Carrey didn't care about your moment. He cared about what the people listening were. He gave you your moment off the air. He wanted to be Jim Carrey for the people listening. He had the macro vision while you were still focused on the micro vision because you wanted it to be about your experience. And he was more worried about their experience who's listening. It's the same concept when you're doing a contest. I don't give a damn who wins. I don't care. Not at all. I want the contest to be good enough that whoever's listening plays along and enjoys it, because that's who it's for. It's not for the person who's on the phone or whatever you're doing it. I'll give you my Norm. I'm a huge Norm Macdonald fan, right?
So am I.
And San Jose Improv, they would
Actually,
bring in
I'll tell
comedians.
you another funny story. You remind me to come back to it.
Well, they would bring in comedians all the time, right? And we had every big name you can think of. I mean, Richard Lewis, Jamie Foxx. I mean, anybody you think of, D.L. Hughley, Kevin Nealon, everybody. And they said, hey, you want Norm Macdonald to come in this Friday? And I'm like, oh my God, yes. Oh my God, yes. Yes, I'm a big Norm Macdonald fan. Now, one of the things I tried to do is I will go and look at old bits because I don't want them to use the new bits that people will be coming to see the show. I don't want you to use new bits. So I will find old bits and try to let you hit it out of the park with an old bit. And that way, I know your stuff and this is it. And so one of my favorite Norm Macdonald bits was Wiener Dogs. And he did this bit back in the 80s. Wiener Dogs.
I remember this.
And so he comes in the studio, he's like, hey, and I'm like, Norm, I'm such a fan. Hell, yeah, hey. Okay, well, you ready to go? Yeah. So I got on there and I'm like, I'm such a fan, Norm Macdonald. Yeah. How you doing? Hey. Yeah. And I'm like, how's the Wiener Dog? Oh, yeah. He does this for 2 minutes. And I finally said, I got nothing. And so I said, hey, Norm Macdonald, this is tonight, 3 shows on Saturday at the Improv, and be on your way. And I found out later from one of his friends who was a comedian, and I found this out because I saw that they had written an article about it. He hated doing radio, and he turned it into performance art. So he wouldn't talk to anybody. That was his performance art. And he'd just go, hey.
Was that his way of getting people to stop inviting him on radio?
Yeah, but he would not.
Maybe.
It didn't matter. And so what I turned out, I thought I was the jerk, right? But then I almost thought it turned around after all the years where I'm like, I'm just so happy I got to be a part of his act. I'm happy that I got to be a dad.
Yeah, and then people who are listening who don't know how it is when you're interviewing someone, you throw it to them, and they're supposed to fill up the time. And when they just go, like I remember interviewing, this was for something on local access. I don't know, 25 years ago. It was a local celebrity, a regional celebrity, and every question I asked was yes or no. Those were the answers, and I'm like, we're going to run out of questions here if they don't start talking, because I only prepared like 5 questions. And you're just like, you can't say it because you're on camera, but you want to be like, come on, give me more. I need more. So
and
I started going, well, can you explain?
They're coming off.
Yeah. When I started going, well, can you expand on that any? And then they would do a little bit, but it was the worst interview I think I ever did. Sometimes you interviewing celebrities, there's been times, I remember once with the Marriott was very gracious to us when I did my golf show, and we were at TPC Sawgrass, and the vice president of the, I shouldn't say, I'm not going to say his name, but I've already kind of outed who it might be. And he's probably not there anymore because that would have been many years ago, but they wanted to say, all they wanted for us to be allowed to use their facilities for free and put us up, by the way, for free, was that they got to, say a little bit about the hotel. They had spent a lot of money on this hotel, and they had spent tens of millions renovating the Sawgrass course. And he had a 5-minute speech, and he just couldn't get through it, to the point where I had people with, poster board and Sharpies, and they're holding up the lines under the camera and above. And I didn't want to edit it. I wanted him to say his thing. Was actually only 2 minutes. I wanted him to go through it all the way, and I would put B-roll in later, but the B-roll basically helped me piece together what he wanted to say, because he couldn't get through it all the way. And it wasn't that he wasn't, and I feel like I'm crushing him right now if he's watching, but here's the thing. He just got nervous. And if you've ever seen this, people on camera, they get nervous. And then the more they screw up, they get more nervous. And so
they start
it gets
thinking
worse.
They look like an idiot, which leads to a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So they were able to get through half of it to begin with, and now they're pressing and going faster, and they're only able to get through, 10%. And I said, you know what? Let's take a break. Let's come back in an hour. I'll leave the camera and all this stuff set up. We'll go to the bar. Let's have some drinks. And by the way, it's only 11 a.m. But
you've done this before. It's not your first rodeo.
And he didn't get through it all, but he got through enough that we made it work. So you don't generally have that, I'm sure, in your business, unless it's probably someone new to the industry. But generally speaking, a lot of people have trouble talking when they think people are judging them.
Absolutely. And you start judging yourself, right? I mean, and you start going, I sound like an idiot. I'm being, and then it gets worse and worse and worse. And
yeah,
it's like, I always remind people, listen, have you ever been in an audience of a performance, of a play, of a speech, or music, anything? And have you ever actively thought to yourself, I hope they suck. I hope they fall over dead. I hope everything goes wrong. And invariably they'll go, no. And I'm like, those are the same people who are watching you. They're pulling for you. They want you to be good. They want you to be great. They have no expectations of you, right?
Right.
That you come in and if you just literally outside of vomiting, they're going to think you did great. And if you vomit it, they'll go, oh, you poor thing. And they'll give you sympathy, right? They don't sit back and go, this is the worst person in the world. He should be fired. Nobody thinks that way, right? I mean,
had that
there's some
conversation.
psychopaths who think that way, but
Yeah, I wrote some jokes for a speech for a CEO once, and we had that exact same conversation. He was very scared. He's like, I'm not a comedian. I'm like, well, first of all, no one has any expectations. And trust me, these are not hard jokes. They're because I don't know your industry that well. So these are fairly plain. I said, so you shouldn't. But when he did the speech, he cut most of them out because he didn't want to be judged by the jokes. And he was afraid that if people, this is the funniest part. He's doing a speech to his employees, a couple hundred. And he was afraid that he would be judged by not getting laughs.
And now it's a completely different world, even though it's changed in the last few months as we record this. But I could see now why they wouldn't want to do jokes because you don't know how it's going to be taken.
Yeah.
And something that would be
if it gets taken wrong, it gets spread all over the internet.
You could have it be just the most innocuous thing. I was doing an interview earlier where a guy was saying something and he goes, I know I'm being criticized. And I'm like, buddy, because he's a writer. I said, you guys aren't used to having criticism happen to you at the moment. It comes out later. I said, I live in the world where criticism comes at me right now. And what you'll learn is you can say, man, puppies are nice, and somebody will call you a Nazi. They will.
Yeah.
So you
they
might as
will.
well just go,
You just
all
got to be
right,
you.
yeah.
You
And
got to be you. I would say. So was that what were they? What kind of writer were they?
rock and roll journalism.
Oh,
How about
there's a lot of
that?
leeway there.
I know, but they're still, but again, when you're talking about iconic rock and roll stars, you have
Mhm.
people who will sit back and defend them no matter what. You can't say anything that they will take, even, well, he battled drugs and alcohol. Well,
Well,
he admitted he battled drugs and
yeah,
alcohol.
he admitted it, or
Yeah.
put in front of the sentence, "We have heard,"
Yeah.
or
And so,
something.
so he was
So I
just
tried
so, yeah.
comedy for a couple of years when I was younger, and then I more wrote. And I never was that concerned back then, but I haven't, like, nowadays. I will tell you a story. I was writing for a very big company. I was writing commercials for one of their product lines. You would know it if I heard it. I'm not going to say it out loud because
Okay.
I'm under I've been sued enough. But
Notice I'm not
I
digging.
they called me to write the script for the commercial, and I had written many for them. But suddenly there was a new change in leadership, and they kept coming back down, and they're like, "We can't say these words." And I'm like, "Why?" And they're like, "Because they might offend people who have disabilities." I think I'd written something like, "Don't turn a blind eye."
Yeah.
And I'm like, and then so being a smart ass, I'm like, well, what if I say, what about turning a deaf ear? And they didn't think that was funny. I thought it was funny. And so I said, okay, well, I'll work it out. I'll figure it out. So I rewrote it. And then they came back and they're like, we can't say this either. And by the way, we really shouldn't be saying that. And I was like, well, what can I say? Like, this is a product that sells cars. It's not that deep.
Yeah.
It's just not that deep. And so finally I wrote a script that they accepted, and I thought it was terrible. It was terrible, actually. I stand by that. It was a terrible script. I would have put, if they put the writer's name on the commercial, I would have put a fake name, assumed name.
Mine.
Because it was dumb.
Well, first of all, before I go to my next situation, you need me to remind you of the Norm Macdonald story. You said, don't let me forget.
I told you about him signing the autograph for the little kid.
Yeah.
But I was talking to, it was this little restaurant in San Antonio where I met him. And then the lady was like, he was here yesterday. It was the waitress. And she said, yesterday he was sitting here by himself and I was trying to take his order, and a kid came over and said, my mom is a big fan of yours and wants to get an autograph and thinks you're really funny. And he was like, oh yeah, she thinks I'm funny, huh? And why does everyone do an impression of him when they do? I didn't even try.
You got to love Norm Macdonald.
And you want a joke to tell your mother? And he said, so he said,
Norm did not work clean, y'all.
No, he didn't. Have you ever heard he got kicked out of a state by a governor, banned? You got to watch. Jim Brewer has a whole thing on it where they told him to be clean, and he just went up and was like,
"You don't tell Norm to do anything." Saturday Night Live found that out. You don't tell Norm not to do anything.
Oh no, you do not. But he said, "Here's you want to joke to tell your mom," and he said, this guy walks in and he's got a duck under his arm. Can you believe a duck was under his arm? And the kid's like, he said, this is the pig I've been stooping. And his wife said, that's a duck, dummy. And he said, I'm not talking to you. And so the kid goes off. He has no idea what he just heard. And the waitress said, I asked Norm, I said, don't you think that was a little bit, the kid was like 7 years old. He's like, don't you think it was a little bit like too, and he's like, oh, normally I say this is the pig I've been fucking. So he's like, I cleaned it up for him. That just cracked me up that he was like, I cleaned it up for him. I changed how we were describing the act. So.
So, Because again, I told you we probably wouldn't get around talking about anything we were talking about because I'm fascinated. You kept going, oh, well, I've done this, I've done that. I tried stand up comedy. I was writing another thing. I have a production company. I did this. I did golf. I own a gym. Are
Well, I did
you?
TV, so golf just was lumped. We
But
had a golf show. We were kind of the Caddyshack of golf TV. It didn't last. It lasted a season and a half. I
where
really
and
think it
was it
was a
on?
great show.
What was it
It was
on?
on Mav TV and Fox Sports South, and you could still see it on YouTube. It was called Real Guys, Real Golf,
Real
and
guys,
it's
real golf.
just the idea was that having comedians and TV and radio personalities and just there was a destination thing, which was the best part because everybody, when we weren't shooting, all of these destinations would call us and say, we would like to host you to come down and scout our location because we want to be on your show. So you'd go and they would wine and dine you, give you massages, let you play golf for the weekend, and then you'd go, well, we'll think about it.
Why aren't I as smart as you? Why am I not as
Well,
smart as
that
you?
was one that we fell into that I didn't know would happen, but we were all too happy to take advantage. And you'd leave and you'd be like, well, we'll let you know. We haven't decided yet what locations we're doing, but we it's a long story, but we ran into an issue where we ended up having to do some legal action against another network.
Wow.
Who does golf?
Who does golf? And we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll leave it at
Because
that.
you've had enough lawsuits, and I know you're
I
talking.
have had, yeah. Sometimes I initiated them, but sometimes not.
Really? Well, as I was telling
yeah.
my friend Brandel Chambly the other day, I'm sorry. And it's a different. Were you always this damn productive?
Sterling Oak Cabinetry has one goal: to build the cabinets of your dreams. They literally specialize in custom cabinetry. No cookie cutter, everything looks the same stuff that you find at the big box stores. Your kitchen is the centerpiece of your home, and your home is your biggest investment. They can work with you or your designer to build just what you want with the materials and finish that you want. And because they're a brand new company, they'll be getting busier and busier. But if you order right now, they'll get your order to you in 6 to 8 weeks. In the world of cabinetry, that's blindingly fast. Contact Rob Scovman at RSKOVMAND at yahoo.com or go to sterlingoakcabinetry.com and get your dreams made reality tomorrow.
Is this just what you did?
I get bored easy. This is something that my wife is always concerned about because I will, this is going to make you laugh. I started making my own beef jerky at home, and I do it in a way that I like. A lot of people make it thick and chewy. I like it crispy, like potato chips, thin. And people started eating them, and I couldn't. Everybody would steal them, and so then I just started putting them in a bag and selling them at my gym just for whatever. And then the next thing, she's like, "Oh, wait a minute. Are you doing a business? This isn't a business with beef jerky, is it?" And I was like, "Well, look, I've already sold like 12 bags." And she's like, no jerky business, please. No jerky business. Because I just get bored and things will come up. I am pitching an idea right now for an online show that I'm trying to raise some money for that I think would be awesome. But right now I'm just writing books and I sold the restaurant and we're just doing the gym. So I am pulling back a little.
My gosh. There are those of us who would be so good at being lazy if just given the opportunity. Right?
I can't do that. I'll tell you this funny story. After I closed the restaurant, by the way, don't ever own a restaurant. I loved owning the restaurant. I was proud of what we did, and the food and the bar was beautiful. And I would go behind the bar and be a comedian almost because I could just walk by and start telling jokes to people and let the bartender do all the work. I'd just be in her way. But probably just like the attention is what my wife said. But you work your ass off. And you work a lot of late. I didn't want to work there the whole time, but I kept losing general managers or somebody would steal or sick. And we opened up 3 months before a little COVID lockdown. So it was just a constant barrage of problems. And when I closed it down, not only did I feel better, but at home, at one point, my wife is like, "Stop following me around." And I didn't realize I was doing it. I was like, I need something to do. I'm used to being like, I never sit down for the past 3 years, and I don't know what to do with myself. So that's when I started finishing the books I had started.
How many books have you up to now?
3. I just released A Path to Faith the last few months. And I had some educational books before that, don't really count. They were part of another company that I owned.
See, I love that you said A Path to Faith, because when people find out, because I have a deep faith, I do. But they think that those of
Mhm.
us with faith just sit around and genuflect and pray all day, right? Yeah. I
Yeah,
pray a lot, usually just in my
right.
head, but no, we
Yeah.
still laugh. We still tell dirty stories about Norm Macdonald telling inappropriate jokes to
Oh,
7-year
yeah.
olds. And there's a
Yeah.
joy that comes from it. I was doing my research on you because, like, as you've noticed, I don't have questions. I've done my research on you, but
Mhm.
you and I are just going to talk.
Yeah.
And I knew for the moment I was doing my research, I'm like, we're not going to get around talking about any damn thing because we're just going
It
to
probably
talk.
won't. We have a lot
We're
of
prob-
cross path type of stuff, even though we've never actually crossed paths.
well,
But
no,
on the faith
and
thing, you're right. People often think there's like a perception that goes with it. And
Mhm.
I'm like, look, I have the dirtiest if we like, I've already dropped an F-bomb on here, and I didn't want to. It
It's
slipped out.
okay.
I've been holding them back.
I get
But
it.
I mean, I'm no Quaker, and it's not. Then that isn't what believing in God is about. And the book is really just, look, if you're on the fence, let me give you some things to consider. That's really all it is. And it's
Can I?
science. I have scientists I interviewed, and I have some stories from my own life, like when my mom passed
I wanted to get to
and
that.
stuff.
I wanted to get to that because I saw where you said there were 3 things that happened that you viewed as miracles. And I'm
Yes.
like, and I saw you on this podcast where it was the most anti-religious podcast ever,
Oh,
right?
you
And the
watched the
guy even looked
atheist
like a
guy?
devil. And I'm like,
Yeah.
gosh. And I
I
felt for
I
you.
should
I
have
was
done
like,
more research before I went on there, but I was willing to have when we had the pre-recording interview.
mhm.
It was like, well, I'll ask some questions, you answer, and then I'll give you my perspective. But he just ended up talking over me a lot, and he started bringing up these obscure Bible passages that nobody ever
Out of
talks
context.
about.
Out of
They're very much out
context.
of context. And I
He
had
was
to go
throwing them
back and
out of
read the one
context.
about the fruit tree, because
Mhm.
I remembered the story, but I don't remember what it was in context to. And then when I read it, I was like, I should have brought that up. But it is what it is. If you notice at the end, I just sort of stopped and was like, okay,
Yeah,
finish
and
what you
that's
got to
the
say.
thing. And I was reading, and I'm not even going to give you not even tell you about the podcast because I just thought, wow, what a sad person. And I looked and he had 19 comments. I read them, and it was like, so you scattered your stuff and you had 19 people who are as unhappy as you are. And I said, if you really want to do something, go to Huff's podcast and see
I
his.
told him that in the
Yeah, and
interview.
go see his comments.
If you want to comment on the Bible text, that's not
Yeah,
my
go to
thing,
Wes
but that's
Huff,
his.
but he doesn't want to do that. And by the way, Wes Huff wouldn't give him time of day, but he doesn't want to do that.
No.
But because they're just there to push their agenda. But I did want to sit back. The 3 miracles. I need to hear what those are.
So 2 of them are connected. So, all right, when my mom passed away, you got to give a little background story on this. So she passed away of cancer in 2009 in July. And she had battled for a year and a half, and really the treatments took just as big a toll on her as the cancer itself. And it was hard watching her just continue to diminish. So she passed away. It was very hard. At the time she passed away, I was going through basically a divorce, and it had started a year before, but through battling, and we had businesses together, so there was just so much fighting over stuff. And then at one point, because of all the money, and we were in the housing crisis, so I had lost a lot of business, and the company I was contracting with only paid every 90 days. So I was at the end of my rope when my daughter came home and said, "Dad, I auditioned for honors course. She's going to represent the county where she was going to perform at the governor's mansion with another group of girls." And I said, "That's awesome, honey. I'm so proud." And then she said, "But I need $100 on Monday for the outfit." And as embarrassing as it is, I didn't have access to my accounts and I was still waiting to get paid. And so I didn't have 100 I could spare. And so I was mad, but I sent my kids out. It was Saturday. I sent them out to play. And then I started cleaning the house. I was vacuuming and I just kept stopping and I slammed the vacuum down on the ground so many times it should have broken. And I was just yelling at God, like, "What? I don't understand. What did I do? I don't understand why this is happening to me. And who's going to want to date a man who can't support his family?" And I just went off for like 30 minutes. That night there was we had a block party, and I didn't want to be it, but I was the president of my HOA at the time, just because no one stepped up. And the block party was at a neighbor's house a few doors up. And I went up there and I was manning the drink table, and this couple, Tony and Sean, they lived 2 doors up, black couple. I point that out because they were very religious. And when black couples go to church on Sunday, it's an all day affair. They're there all day. And so they're very deeply spiritual. She came up to me and she handed me money. And I looked down and I said, "Well, the drinks are free." And she laughed. She goes, "No, God told me you needed this. And I don't argue when God tells me to do something. I obey." And I laughed and I said, "I can't take your money, Sean." She said, "No, you can give it to somebody else, but I can't take it back." I said, "Okay." So I put it in my pocket. I didn't really even look at it. She came back over and she said, "Did you see what I gave you?" And I said, "No." She said, "Take a look." And it was $100 bill. And I got weak kneed. I was like, "Sean, why are you doing this? I can't take it." And she repeated everything she had told me before. Okay. So I gave that to my daughter. 3 years later, I'm now remarried. My ex is trying to take the kids away from me and move them across the country. So I'm involved in a very expensive battle with lawyers and everything. And I'm still working for the same corporation. It paid me very well as a contractor, but they would go months, sometimes 3, without paying me right away. And we were very low on money because we had just paid the next retainer. I think it was like $34,000 or something like that. So I got called to come in. I don't want to turn down the work because we need the money. And my wife says, "Well, you're going to have to turn it down because you don't have any gas money and we don't get any money for another 3 days," which would have been Friday. And I said, "No, I'm not turning down the work. I got enough gas to get there into Atlanta. I'll figure it out." So I figured I would just borrow the money, tell somebody I left my wallet at home, whatever I had to do. I was too embarrassed to tell them I didn't have the money. So that morning when I'm leaving, I've already told you I'm a smart ass. As I'm driving out, I'm passing Tony and Sean's house. And I look up at the sky and I said, "God, if you got another G-spot, today would be a good day for that." Mm-hmm. So I go to this building where I'm working, and this was a media company, big media company. And they were upgrading the building that had been built like 35 years ago from analog to digital. All the rooms are getting upgraded. And my office was at the end of a hallway, and the building manager had to pass. And then across from his office was a break room / records room. And all of these books in the record room had the blueprints and wiring diagrams for all the building, every room in the building. And they hadn't been opened in 20, 30 years. But here they were having to break them open so they could figure out where all the wires were that needed to be pulled out and replaced. And so at lunchtime, I go down to Michael, who was the building manager, who I found him in the records room. And I asked if I could borrow $20. And he said, "Oh, I don't have any cash on me, but I can run down the road to the ATM." And I didn't want to bother. I didn't want to inconvenience somebody. So I said, "You know what? I'll just ask around." I'll find it. While I was getting ready to leave the room, he was opening up this book that literally dust was flying out of because it had been sitting on the shelf so long. And he said, "Bryan, hold on. You're never going to believe this." And he pulled out a fresh $100 bill out of the middle of this book. And I literally sat down in a chair behind me. I almost missed the chair. And I sat there and I see it and I looked at it, and the date was the year that I was asking for the money.
Wow.
And the funniest part about that is that he's a corporate guy. So he's like, "You got to pay it back. I'll let you borrow, but you got to pay it back to the corporation." Anyway, I went home and told my wife, and we were just blown away. And I have told friends of mine who are atheists, I'm like, "You explain that." And they are like, "I can't." But there's an explanation. And I'm like, "I know, but is there an explanation in the physical world?" And they're like, "There has to be, but I don't know what it is." So,
see, and the thing of it is if you pay attention, things like that happen a lot, even when you don't realize it. Stuff that just gratuitously happens. And I've had on I had on a physicist who sat back and said he found religion because he went to try to disprove them all. Right.
Yeah.
And he goes, the more I studied it,
I think I know who that might be.
Hugh Ross.
Hugh Ross. Yeah. I read his book.
So matter of fact, I'm recording with him another episode next week. So
I want to watch that.
I'm talking, and he goes, I went to disprove it all. And he goes, the more I studied it, the more I was like, wow. And he goes, and it all fell into place. And my thing is how much faith does it take to just believe this is it? And when you sit back and look at space, when you look at all of this stuff and you go, wow. And then the more we discover now, the more we realize that there's things that we still can't explain. Here we are in now and things in space where you're going, that literally, according to our science of 2 years ago, should not have been here. Should not be able to exist as it is. And that's it. You don't have to believe. I hope you do, but you don't have to believe. And as I was saying to people on that podcast, it's like, I wasn't angry at them. The one that you went on, I just hurt for them. I'm like, how sad and lonely is your life? How, I'm sure he just goes and he didn't realize it. The stuff he believes in is not. I'm like, wow, what's the thing that they said? Man is built to worship. You'll either worship God or you will find something to worship, whether you, and the people who say, I don't worship anything. Yeah, you do.
You do something. You worship something.
Yeah.
Whether it's
you
money
may worship
or
yourself.
The government or whatever, you're looking to something.
And that's
I told him the story on there, what I thought was funny, of Dr. Bruce Grayson from the University of Virginia. And I was supposed to interview him, but he had a stroke. But he sent me his white papers and some of his other written interviews. And he tells the story in his book After, which is a great read. He's been studying near-death experience. He's chronicled, I think, 1,500 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Originally looking to prove that they were dreams or not or whatever. And one of his first story in the book that he tells is where he was a new resident at a hospital. He just graduated from med school for psychology. And he gets his pager goes off because this was the early 70s. And he spilled something on his tie. It was red. I think it was either soup or ketchup. I don't remember what it was. So he buttoned up his jacket, his white lab coat, and he went down the hall, and they said a girl had been admitted who had tried to kill herself. So he goes in the room, and she's all plugged up to everything, but she's out, and she's been medically, she's out because they've given her drugs.
Yeah.
And so he figures he'll come back the next day. He goes down the hall. He said it was about 150 yards, maybe a little more. And he speaks to the roommate who called the police. And they have a conversation about what she found, what she saw, all this stuff. He introduced himself to her. And then the next day when he went back to the room where the little girl was, he said, my name is Dr. Bruce Grace. She said, I know who you are. I was watching you talk to my roommate. You had something on your tie that you were covering up. And it ate at him for years, trying to, in his mind, because he grew up in a house of scientists who were atheists, trying to explain that. Had somebody told her? Was it a nurse? And there was no he talked to everyone in the hospital. Nobody could explain it. And it just ate at him. So when he had a chance to form the Office of Perceptual Studies at University of Virginia, he did. He and a few doctors who were famous, Raymond Moody. But when I was telling the atheist guy that story, he said, so you just go to spirit? And I was like, well, I don't know another explanation for, I was listening to you 150 yards away and I was in a bed with tubes hooked up to me. And if you can come up with a better explanation, I'm fine. And he goes, well, maybe this and that. And I said, I'm pretty sure the doctor probably thought through most of those things.
Yeah. Here's where their anger comes from, is that, hey, if I'm wrong, I've just tried to live a good life. If you're wrong, good luck.
Right.
And the same thing, just because I'll have to wrap this up here quickly. I only asked for an hour of your time, but my mother years ago, remember I grew up in Alabama, she was on the phone during a lightning storm and lightning struck the phone and literally knocked her 15 feet across the room under the table. And she always would tell the story that she was watching everybody. She watched everybody go rush to her.
She had an outer body.
She watched everything and she was like, and she goes, it took me a second to go, oh, that's me. And then she's like there and she goes, it was great. Wherever I was great. But then someone said to me, you got to go back.
Yeah,
you got to go back.
That's common.
And so it's like she went through that. And I'll give you one last story on the day she died. And she died suddenly, quickly. We weren't expecting it. But she had gotten up and walked in. This is from my stepfather and my sister-in-law's brother, who was an EMT, and he was at the house that day. She walks into the kitchen. She's going to go take a shower. Her back hurts. They hear her fall. They go in there and, Charlie's an EMT and he no pulse. So he starts compressions. All of a sudden she comes to, she looks up and she goes, don't worry about me. I'm fine. And dies.
Yeah. That we talk about in the book, something I had never heard of except for a story my mom told me. So when a lot of people, particularly with dementia patients, they'll be incoherent, but the last few hours of their life before they pass, they suddenly, as if the dementia has gone away. And they call it glowing or brightening up. There's all kinds of names for it. They've been studying it. And my mom's best friend asked her to go with her to Alabama. No, it was Meridian, Mississippi. And because her mom was passing away, she was sick and they told her she only had a few days left. And when they got there, she was cleaning her room, but she hadn't been out of bed in a year, couldn't walk. And she said, I just can't leave it like this. And they're like, what do you mean leave it like that? She said, I just can't leave it like this. And then she laid down. And then the next morning, she sat up and began talking to her parents and staring in the corner of the room, sort of up to the corner. And she just kept saying, yes, okay, Mom, okay. And then she laid down and died. Now, the people who believe that that's a dream, that's an incredible dream. I don't believe that at all. I do believe that they came down to say it's your time. But when your mom heard that voice, that wasn't her time. But now it was. And they were coming to let her know this is going to be good.
And I'm right there. My brother was dying of an illness, and I called him up one day, and he's like, I said, what are you doing? He goes, I'm just sitting here. Mom's here and Dad's here. And my parents had passed, both had passed. And I said, really? And I said, where are they? And he goes, well, Mom's on the bed with me, and Dad's over across the room. Now you have to understand, my father was an alcoholic and drug addict and become ostracized from the family.
Okay.
And I'm like, wow, that would make kind of sense because he wants to be there, but he can't be there. And I said,
Ah.
well, tell him I said hello. And he sits back and he goes, they say hey. And I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome. And
It
you and I
is.
can go down these stories because there's,
Yeah.
and and I just find it there's so many of those things where you go, wow,
Yeah.
this
Well,
is not
ever
all
since I
there
wrote the
is.
book, I get emails from people like, this is my story. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's so many of them out there. There's a book out there called The Irreducible Mind. It's written by a group of scientists, and they're studying all kinds of like telepathy, all these different things, like how identical twins sort of seem to feel the same things. Um, and the whole foreword to the book is them imploring scientists to start studying this, that there's something there. And because you don't understand it and you can't feel it and test it and mold it and do a normal physical test, they ignore it. But it's part of our world, and that we should be studying it more, but they won't.
Yeah, it's interesting when you go down the history of mankind, how much
Hmm.
situations where rituals were observed. Why? If it was just a body, why? With
Yeah.
all of the different stuff, because we knew intrinsically it was more than just a body. All right,
Yeah.
I told you. I had no
All
idea what we
right.
were going to talk about, and I told you we'd
Well,
probably end up talking about just the stuff because I
if you want to have
knew
me back on, we can talk about finance. I've
we
got an ingrown toenail down here.
We
We can
can
maybe
talk
talk about
about
that. And
anything. I want to talk
yeah,
about our golf
anything.
game. I want to do more comedians. Talk about that. We can talk more about the near-death experiences and about faith and stuff, and also the worst podcast you've ever been a guest on. I'm hoping this doesn't make the list, but if it does, let's talk
No,
about
it was probably the one you've referenced. We didn't even
it.
talk about we didn't even talk about education, but
Not at all.
it's
And that's
probably
what I told you.
okay.
When I asked you to be on my podcast, I'm like, I got a 13 and a 15-year-old. I'd love to talk to you about it. But as I also said, I
Okay.
got no questions. And we're going to go
Okay.
wherever the conversation leads us. And that's where
Right.
it was. Bryan, thank you, my friend. All of
Thank
Bryan's
you.
stuff, you can find his
Thanks for
books,
having me.
everything else you have. You'll find it all on the links at the bottom of this podcast. And yes, we'll find a time to do this again. Bryan Wetzel, my friend, thank you.
Thank you. It was an honor.